Well, first we woke up to the Trump administration taking Jeff Bezos and Amazon hostage on live TV. It was like a hostage crisis. We woke up to Carolyn Levitt, obviously at Trump's instigation, deciding in response to a question after they had seen something on Punchbowl News, which is usually legitimate, that Amazon was going to raise its tariffs or to list tariffs that Trump had imposed around the world on its products, which of course all the other retailers would follow. And they said, it's a political act of war. And then the shooting war was over within about 48 minutes, because then Amazon came out with an announcement that said, has anybody ever heard of Amazon Haul? No. Well, there's a thing over here. It's more like wholesale. And we were spitballing about whether to list the tariffs, but yeah, we talk about a lot of different ideas. I'm not making this up. This is a version of the immediate. As soon as Jeff Bezos saw his photo and him being basically branded a political enemy, blasted all over the press conference, they went into damage control, disaster recovery mode immediately. Now, what I want to focus this hot take on is we're seeing the same obey and a little bit less resist in the business world to Donald Trump beating the American economy to death. You would think big business, right, would have some power and control over Donald Trump. I mean, when they knocked on his door and said, well, you knock off some of these tariffs, you're going to have empty shelves at Christmas. And the ghosts of Christmas future showed up in Walmart, Home Depot, and Target. He sort of listened. But now all we're seeing is obey, obey, obey. They are complicit. And that's the purpose of this hot take. Big business, as always, is complicit in Donald Trump beating the American economy to death in the first 100 days. And I'm going to cover it right here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. Put a little bit of my former Wall Street hat on right now. Let's just take the plane up a minute and look down at the landscape at the 100-day mark with the economy, and then I'll make this point. Donald Trump couldn't get away with what he's doing if business didn't obey what he wanted. I'll give you an example. About 2 weeks ago, we thought, well, this is maybe an act of political courage. Walmart, Target, and Home Depot's CEOs knocked on the Oval Office door, literally, went there for a meeting and told him to knock it off. Gave Trump a picture of empty shelves, not even at Christmas, like in the next few weeks, and said, how do you like that look? You know, as Donald Trump struggles to hold on to the Walmart voter in red states. And based on recent polling, he's not doing a very good job. I mean, if by holding on you mean actually suffocating them and strangulating them, then he's doing a great job. But in terms of wanting these voters to vote for him or the party again, not really going well for him at this moment. But big business, I said, oh, well, there's a political act of courage. They went in there and stood up to the president. Yeah, that was the first layer of the story. But now we've got new reporting that now that the shipments are coming in, what they're going to do based on that meeting that they had, the second part of the meeting, we didn't really get a clear understanding of, is that they're going to apparently eat as part of their profit, take it out of their profits, the 145% tariff on China. In other words, if they buy a product, it's not even a tariff anymore against China. It's just an embargo. We don't want your goods. Nothing says I don't want your goods, like doubling the price of them on the way in. So let's say Walmart buys, or any of these other companies, buys a widget, some sort of product, for $1. And then there's $1.45 put on top of it. So now we're up to $2.45, okay? And they would normally sell that thing for, let's say, $4, okay? So now they're going to sell it for $4, but now they're only going to make $1.55 in profit because they're going to eat the tariff, whereas before they made $3. How is this sustainable as a business model? I don't understand how, if you cut your profitability on Chinese goods in half or worse, this is sustainable. This is like the old joke. You know, we lose money on everything we sell, but we make it up in volume. You're never going to make this up in volume. But the fact that they cut that deal, one of the deals that Donald Trump, he said, I'm going to cut 200 deals in the 90 days. He said already in his interview with the Atlantic, he's had a series of interviews. Or actually with Time Magazine, because they were sort of back to back. In Time Magazine, he said, well, have you, where are the deals? Peter Navarro, fresh off his prison stint, your trade representative, said they were going to cut 90 deals in 90 days. Well, you're 15 days in, you haven't cut any deals. Oh, that's not true. I cut 200 deals. 200 deals? What are the 200 deals? Well, I can't really talk about them. Couldn't name one of them. Have they already happened? Well, they're going to happen. They've happened and they're going to happen over the next 3 or 4 weeks. And then when they cut to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and they cut to the Agriculture Secretary, who would be in the know about the deals, they don't know about any deals. Now, one of the deals he may have cut, which he forgot, is this Walmart, Target, and Home Depot willing to eat his tariff. So that's obey. And then we had Amazon, which I said, oh, well, maybe here's a moment of political balls for Bezos. I mean, we already have our issues with Bezos for many, many good reasons. $1 billion donated to the inauguration for Donald Trump. $40 million given to Melania Trump for a documentary that's not worth, a dime. From Amazon and Bezos. Those are two major things. Him chloroforming freedom of the press at the Washington Post after he acquired it. He made a big stand during his acquisition. He changed the slogan. Democracy dies in the dark. Well, he then proceeded to turn off the lights at the Washington Post, and which didn't help Kamala Harris. So we got a lot of issues with Jeff Bezos, right? I know he's all pumped up and running around with Lauren Sanchez. He's got these big mega yachts where they have to take down bridges in order for the yacht to fit underneath it, things like that. But I said, all right, maybe he's got a little bit of political balls here. He's spent all this money trying to buy a presidency, and he's going to properly list the tariff next to the retail, right? And it's no different, frankly, than the tax that's listed, so you know what your total out-the-door purchase price is. It's weird with it. Or when you go on one of these websites to buy tickets for something, like a sporting event or a show, concert, and it's like, well, the tickets are $122, but then after handling fees and print fees and shipping fees and convenience fees, it's not $122 anymore. It's $208, and you had that happen, and then they give you the math. I mean, it's proper. Now, Carolyn Levitt, and I really mean Donald Trump, freaked out about that. Right? They don't want that. Well, why didn't you do all that? You heard the clip. Why didn't you do all that during the Biden administration when inflation was so high? They want to always ignore what happened to the economy when Obama came in and got an economy that was on life support off of GW and had to put almost the equivalent of $1 trillion and bail out big banks and bail out the auto industry in order to preserve the American economy. And Biden inherited the Trump COVID economy, where they had to put $3 trillion into the economy, which, yes, led to it running a little bit hot after that, which led to inflation and pricing. But that was all trending in the right direction when Donald Trump got the economy and then crushed it to death over the last 90 days. So you got Amazon, soon as they were called out in the presser by Carolyn Levitt, with the Treasury Secretary standing next to her with a photo she already had prepared of Jeff Bezos, he freaked out and said, well, no, we weren't really going to do that. Why weren't you going to do that? You should have done that. And why is Walmart and everybody who owns stock in Walmart, Home Depot, and Target, you should think twice, because they've just decided that they're going to bend over backwards for Donald Trump and try to help him instead of convincing him that his economic approach is killing America and killing Americans. I mean, just look at continuing on the 100-day theme, just look at what Donald Trump did all at the same time and wonders why the U.S. economy is failing and the suffering of Americans is rising. Think about the things that support, the fuel lines that plug into the American economy, that keep it afloat and support it. And how many of those Donald Trump has damaged and or cut? Federal funding to the states and not-for-profits. There's a U.S. job behind every one of those dollars. There's money that goes not only to help the person in the program, but also it's just money that ends up in the economy of that state, that not-for-profit, and the rest. He cut tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of federal funding to the states and not-for-profit in America. Click, right? He's attacking universities. Think about your communities. Who's your big employer? Could be a university and a medical center. Cut tens of billions of dollars there, right? Then let's turn to throwing federal workers onto the bread line, onto the unemployment line. Take away their paychecks. Hundreds of millions of dollars related to federal workers being fired, straining state budgets with now no federal funding all at the same time. Click. Then you take the, we're going to buy less. We're going to do less. We're going to support less as a federal government. We're going to employ less, right? Cut the fuel line to the American economy. Go internationally. We're going to cut hundreds of billions of dollars of federal aid around the world. Click. We're going to cut military spending around the world. Cut. We're going to cut State Department diplomacy spending around the world. Cut. You see why the American economy is sputtering? You see why it's on life support all at the same time? Then at the same exact time, when the American economy can't survive, there's barely a heartbeat, we're going to raise the tariffs around the world to a collective 23% and do a trade embargo with China at 145%, one of our leading trade partners, and start a trade war. And along with Canada, helping get its new prime minister, congratulations, Prime Minister Carney, elected in Canada, and then fight with Mexico as well, which builds a lot of our cars. All in the first 100 days. There are people that are speculating that a Russian asset would have done nothing different than what Donald Trump has done, both in his relationship with Russia and the rest of the world, and to destroy the American economy from within. I defy somebody, you can leave it in the comments here on the MeidasTouch Network, to tell me what a true Russian asset, somebody manipulated, controlled by Russia, would have done differently, burrowing into America, right? This is like the Americans, that show on television. Burrowing into America, Trojan horse, getting themselves in. What would they have done differently to the American economy if their goal was to destroy its GDP, and make people suffer in America from within? What would they have done differently? That's the thought experiment I want people to think about. So I'll continue to cover everything related to the 100 days, the economy, and beyond, not because I want to, because I have to, here on the MeidasTouch Network. You're already here. Subscribe to the MeidasTouch Network as they approach 5 million subscribers, the #1 new YouTube channel in the world. So proud to be on here with them. We formed another YouTube channel, sort of a companion piece. We call it Legal AF MTN, Legal AF MTN. That's where we do all the law and politics. I have a dozen great contributors. I do a lot of the hot takes there myself. Got some new people joining this week, which you're going to be amazed by. Come over there, hit the subscribe button there. We're going to hit 600,000 this week. And we've only been around since the election, and then 1 million before the year is over. That's important. We're all independent journalists here. Keeps the lights on. I really appreciate all of your time. Until my next Legal AF, the podcast, Legal AF, the YouTube channel, or my contributions here on the MeidasTouch Network, I'm Michael Popak. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.